The glittering lights of Hollywood have always possessed a unique, almost hypnotic ability to captivate the public imagination, projecting an illusion of flawless perfection, effortless luxury, and generational wealth that feels entirely detached from the mundane struggles of everyday existence. For decades, millions of families around the globe settled into their living rooms every week, tuning into their favorite television networks to watch a generation of remarkably talented children navigate the hilarious, colorful, and seemingly idyllic world of teenage sitcoms. To the casual viewer, these young stars represented the absolute pinnacle of success, embodying a dream where talent was immediately rewarded with astronomical fortunes, permanent financial security, and a lifetime of carefree indulgence. We watched them laugh, we watched them grow, and we naturally assumed that the massive media empires capitalizing on their charm were ensuring that these kids were set up for life. The vibrant backdrops of the early 2000s television landscape created a powerful facade, convincing an entire generation of viewers that their childhood idols were living like royalty behind the scenes, far removed from the anxieties of rent, bills, or economic instability. This collective assumption became a deeply ingrained cultural narrative, a foundational belief that entering the prestigious ranks of a major television network as a leading actor meant unlocking a vault of endless prosperity that would forever guarantee a life of comfort and privilege. If you are anywhere near the age where your weekend routine revolved around the golden era of live-action children's entertainment, you almost certainly remember the specific, infectious energy of the shows that define the cultural zeitgeist of that unforgettable period. The laughter tracks, the bright wardrobe choices, the iconic catchphrases, and the relatable yet heightened adolescent dilemmas came the backdrop of our own formative years, weaving these actors tightly into the fabric of our personal nostalgia. We felt an intimate connection to them, treating them less like distant celebrities and more like extended neighborhood friends whose weekly antics brought genuine joy into our homes. Yet, as the years have rolled by and the child stars of that era have transitioned into adulthood, a fascinating and deeply sobering shift has begun to occur within the entertainment industry. The pristine curtain of Hollywood perfection is gradually being pulled back, exposing a starkly contrasting reality that stands in sharp opposition to the extravagant myths we so eagerly believed during our youth. It turns out that behind the infectious smiles, the perfectly timed jokes, and the historic ratings, a vastly different story was quietly unfolding in the financial ledgers and private lives of these young performers. The contrast between the booming, multi-million-dollar success of the television properties themselves and the actual economic compensation received by the talent driving that success is a revelation that is currently sending shockwaves through the community of fans who grew up idly. Zing these stars. It forces us to re-examine the very nature of the entertainment business and confront a systemic structure that left many of our favorite creators vulnerable to the harsh realities of a rapidly changing market. To truly understand how this disconnect happened, one must look closely at the fragile beginnings and the hidden financial vulnerabilities that often precede a young actor's rise to fame. A journey that is rarely as smooth or glamorous as the final edited broadcast suggests. Long before the bright studio lights flickered to life and the cameras began rolling on the sets of historic sitcoms, the foundation of a child actor's career is often built on a delicate balance of hope, sacrifice, and significant economic pressure. Many of these young talents do not come from backgrounds of generational privilege. Instead, their families are often navigating the volatile and unpredictable currents of ordinary working-class life, where financial security is a moving target and stability is never entirely guaranteed. The decision to pursue a career in the fiercely competitive entertainment hub of Los Angeles is frequently driven not just by a pure passion for the performing arts, but by a deeper, unspoken desire to achieve a level of financial freedom that could fundamentally transform a family's trajectory. For a single parent raising an only child, the stakes are magnified tenfold, turning every audition, every callback, and every minor background role into a high-stakes gamble against the looming threat of economic hardship. In these households, life can quickly become a dizzying emotional and financial roller coaster, oscillating dramatically between brief periods of celebratory abundance and sudden nerve-wracking stretches of absolute scarcity. A successful sales year or a lucky streak of commercial bookings might temporarily elevate a family into the comfortable ranks of the lower middle class, allowing for modest luxuries like a coveted pair of brand new sneakers or a special dinner out. But just as quickly, the dry spells of the industry can set in, plunging the household back into a state of acute anxiety where counting pennies becomes the daily norm and calling relatives for basic assistance to put food on the table becomes a painful necessity. This constant, exhausting cycle of financial insecurity creates a unique psychological landscape for a young child, instilling a deep awareness of the value of a dollar and a profound sense of responsibility towards supporting the household. When a major opportunity finally materializes on a prominent network, it feels like the ultimate lifeline, a golden ticket that promises to permanently shatter the cycle of poverty and usher in an era of undeniable stability. As we prepare to dive deeper into the specific numbers and the astonishingly low compensation structures that govern some of the biggest hits of the early 2000s, we invite you to journey with us through this unfolding revelation by subscribing to our channel and joining our growing community as we uncover the hidden truths behind the media that shaped our world. The early days of entering a major production are filled with a dizzying mix of awe and grueling labor as a 13-year-old talent is suddenly thrust from the quiet anxieties of a struggling household into the high-energy, fast-paced environment of a professional television set. Working alongside established creators and vibrant ensembles, these young actors quickly become essential fixtures of the network's burgeoning comedy lineup, earning what feels to a young teenager like a substantial sum of money at $3,000 per episode. In the early stages, this compensation seems monumental, a validation of hard work that offers a temporary reprieve from the immediate financial pressures of the past. It is within these intensely collaborative environments that pivotal creative partnerships are forged, bringing together uniquely talented individuals whose natural on-screen chemistry will soon captivate millions of viewers worldwide. The shared experiences of navigating the unique pressures of adolescent stardom create an unbreakable bond between these young performers, laying the groundwork for future collaborations that would eventually define an entire television network. As these shows grew from modest comedy experiments into massive cultural phenomena, commanding the attention of the global youth market and generating astronomical advertising revenues, the public naturally assumed that the financial fortunes of the leading actors were rising in perfect synchronization with the soaring ratings. The immense popularity of these series centered around the hilarious dynamics of contrasting personalities navigating the chaotic landscape of teenagehood solidified their place in television history, creating a legacy that continues to resonate today. Yet, as the production expanded and the episodes piled up over multiple highly successful seasons, the actual financial realities governing the talent remained startlingly modest. Trapped in an outdated industry framework that failed to account for the massive shifting tide of the media landscape, a topic that sets the stage for a dramatic revelation of the true cost of stardom. As the cultural phenomenon grew and the television series entered its prime, the discrepancy between public perception and economic reality became a massive chasm that would shape the actors' lives for decades to come. To the millions of loyal fans tuning in every week, the two lead actors were the absolute kings of children's television, commanding the highest ratings on the network and anchoring a multi-million-dollar entertainment empire. The show, centered on the brilliantly comedic and chaotic dynamic of two mismatched stepbrothers navigating the turbulent waters of high school and adolescence, became an international juggernaut. It spawned merchandise, video games, soundtrack albums, and highly rated television movies, embedding itself so deeply into the fabric of global pop culture that its continuous success seemed entirely unstoppable. Yet behind the scenes, the financial architecture supporting these young stars was shockingly restrictive, operating under a rigid system that bore no resemblance to the massive wealth being generated by their creative labor. Over the course of 4 highly demanding seasons and a grand total of 60 unforgettable episodes, the leading performers poured their hearts, souls, and teenage years into building an iconic franchise. Working exhausting hours on set under the intense scrutiny of the public eye, when the final ledger was calculated at the conclusion of the series, the median rate for a starring actor on one of the most successful children's shows in television history averaged out to a seemingly substantial $15,000 per episode. To an ordinary observer or a working-class teenager, a cumulative sum of $900,000 over a 4-year period sounds like an absolute fortune. An unimaginable windfall capable of securing lifelong financial independence and erasing every economic anxiety. However, the brutal math of the traditional Hollywood ecosystem quickly dismantled this illusion of massive wealth, revealing a predatory and heavily taxed structure that aggressively eroded the gross earnings of young performers long before a single dollar ever reached their personal bank accounts. In the complex world of professional entertainment, an actor does not simply pocket their raw salary. Instead, they operate as a business entity heavily burdened by mandatory financial obligations to a wide network of industry representatives. From that initial $900,000, a significant percentage was instantly sliced away to compensate the essential team that helped secure and manage the career, including standard 10% commissions to agents, additional 10 to 15% fees to personal managers, and legal fees to entertainment attorneys. Following the substantial deductions for professional representation, the unforgiving hand of state and federal taxation swept in to claim its massive share, heavily penalizing the high earners and instantly cutting the remaining balance nearly in half. When the dust finally settled and the rigorous financial math was complete, the actual take-home pay for a leading star of a global television phenomenon plummeted to a modest clear balance of approximately $125,000 a year. While this remains a very respectable upper-middle-class income for an adult, it is a staggering departure from the multi-million-dollar generational wealth that the public universally assumed these global icons were accumulating while driving a massive corporate media machine. This yearly income had to support not just the young actor themselves, but also their dependent family members who had often sacrificed their own traditional employment to manage the chaotic schedule of a working child star. The financial strain was further compounded by the unique and expensive demands of living in Los Angeles, maintaining a professional public image, paying for independent healthcare, and preparing for an intensely uncertain future in a volatile industry known for its brutal boom and bust cycles. The realization that stardom did not equal permanent financial immunity was a sobering awakening for these teenagers, who were simultaneously experiencing the highest peaks of international fame and the quiet, persistent pressure of ordinary household budgeting. They were recognized on every street corner, swarmed by adoring fans at public appearances, and celebrated as the faces of a golden era of entertainment, yet their actual financial runway was terrifyingly short, providing zero room for error or extravagance. This delicate financial balancing act was sustainable as long as the production line kept moving and the weekly episodic checks continued to arrive. But the true systemic trap of children's television during the early 2000s was lurking quietly in the fine print of their contracts, waiting to manifest the moment the cameras stopped rolling. The profound vulnerability of this generation of child actors stems from a critical, industry-wide absence of a financial mechanism that traditional adult television stars had relied upon for decades to secure their long-term economic survival. In the broader landscape of primetime network television, a successful actor's true wealth is rarely built solely on their initial episodic salary. Rather, it is anchored in the lucrative concept of residuals, which are continuous royalty payments issued to performers whenever a show is rebroadcast, syndicated, sold to international markets, or distributed on home video and streaming platforms. For generations, adult actors on major networks could rely on these residual checks to provide a steady, reliable stream of passive income for the rest of their lives, ensuring that a hit show would continue to pay dividends long after the physical production had concluded. However, within the Wild West of kids' television, during that specific era, the contractual frameworks were notoriously outdated and heavily weighted in favor of the massive media conglomerates, completely omitting residual protections for the young talent who actually created the value. When a hit children's series wrapped up its final season and the production formally concluded, the financial connection between the network and the actors was instantly severed, meaning that the money stopped flowing completely and permanently the very day the show ended. It did not matter if the series was subsequently broadcast multiple times a day across global networks. It did not matter if it became a permanent fixture of afternoon television syndication. And it did not matter if it was later licensed to massive digital streaming platforms where millions of new viewers could discover it daily. The network retained absolute ownership of the intellectual property and pocketed every single dollar of the continuous advertising and licensing revenues, while the actors who gave the show its heart and soul received absolutely nothing for the ongoing utilization of their likenesses and performances. for a young star emerging from the bubble of a major television network at the tender age of 19. This abrupt economic cutoff was a jarring and deeply disorienting reality check that forced an immediate confrontation with the cold mechanics of adult survival. The illusions of Hollywood grandeur vanished overnight, replaced by the immediate, practical necessity of securing a continuous income to support a household and maintain a baseline of financial stability. The realization that 4 years of intense, globally recognized labor on a historic television series was not enough to guarantee long-term security for a mother and son was an incredibly heavy emotional burden to carry into early adulthood, shattering any remaining myths about the protective nature of childhood fame. The cash reserves accumulated during the show's run, while helpful, were finite and rapidly depleting under the weight of ordinary living expenses, taxes, and the ongoing costs of navigating a fiercely competitive industry where previous success is never a guarantee of future employment. The sudden transition from an internationally celebrated television icon to a young adult who simply had to get back to work to pay rent highlights a profound systemic failure that left an entire generation of creative children economically vulnerable while corporate executives built empires on their backs. This stark reality forced these young performers to immediately reinvent themselves, stepping out from the comfortable shadows of their iconic childhood personas and entering the unpredictable, often unforgiving world of adult entertainment with a deep sense of urgency and an acute awareness of their own financial precarity, set against a backdrop where the industry itself was aggressively evolving without them. The profound realization that an internationally celebrated television run did not guarantee permanent financial security marked the beginning of a complex decades-long journey of survival, reinvention, and ultimate advocacy for an entire generation of child actors. Stepping off the set of a legendary sitcom at just 19 years old, the immediate priority shifted from celebrating a historic cultural milestone to facing the grueling, competitive realities of the adult entertainment market. The finite nature of the capital earned during those formative years meant that resting on past laurels was an impossible luxury. There was an urgent practical necessity to find new roles, audition constantly, and navigate a Hollywood landscape that frequently pigeonholes child stars, making it notoriously difficult for them to transition into mature, respected, dramatic or comedic actors. The pressure was immense, as these young adults carried not only their own aspirations, but also the ongoing financial responsibilities of supporting families who had relied heavily on their childhood earnings. This forced transition required an extraordinary amount of psychological resilience and emotional maturity, as they had to learn to separate their self-worth from the massive, fleeting adoration of their youth and rebuild their careers from the ground up, one audition at a time. Over the years, this journey took many unexpected turns, involving a diverse array of creative pursuits including independent filmmaking, voice acting for major animated franchises, digital content creation, and occasional returns to mainstream television and feature films. Each step forward was a lesson in self-reliance, a conscious effort to diversify income streams and build a sustainable career that was entirely independent of the network systems that had previously controlled their economic destinies. This process of personal and professional growth unfolded in the public eye, with fans watching their childhood heroes transform into seasoned, grounded industry veterans who possessed a uniquely realistic perspective on the mechanics of fame and fortune. As this generation matured into their 30s, a collective voice began to emerge from the community of former child stars, characterized by an unprecedented level of transparency and a shared desire to dismantle the damaging myths surrounding Hollywood compensation. By opening up on modern media platforms, podcasts, and in deeply personal interviews, these creators began pulling back the curtain on the specific contractual traps, the lack of residual payments, and the emotional toll of navigating a system that capitalized on youth while offering minimal long-term protection. This candid wave of truth-telling has completely altered the cultural conversation around youth media, transforming former stars from passive symbols of nostalgia into powerful, articulate advocates for systemic reform. They have frequently pointed out that their generation was uniquely positioned in a historical blind spot, caught directly between the traditional structures of broadcast television and the massive, uncharted dawn of the digital streaming era. It was a time when pioneering programs like Kenan and Kel, All That, and their own historic stepbrother sitcom paved the way for massive network expansions. Yet the performers themselves were left entirely unprotected by outdated union regulations that failed to secure a piece of the continuous multi-million-dollar syndication and digital licensing pies. Today, as those historic episodes stream continuously on major global platforms like Netflix, drawing in millions of hours of viewership from both nostalgic adults and a completely new generation of children, the stark contrast remains unresolved. As the actors do not receive a single cent in residuals for this massive, ongoing digital exploitation. However, this painful historical reality has served a vital educational purpose, acting as a cautionary tale that has fundamentally changed the way modern child actors, their parents, and their legal representatives approach the entertainment industry. There is a profound sense of pride among these veterans that their willingness to speak openly about being financially exploited has empowered the current generation of young talent to be vastly smarter, more legally sophisticated, and fiercely protective of their financial futures. Today's young performers are entering the industry with significantly stronger contract protections, securing robust residual clauses that encompass digital streaming rights, international distribution, and multi-platform syndication from the very beginning of their careers. They are also utilizing modern digital tools and social media platforms to maintain direct ownership of their personal brands, ensuring that they are never completely dependent on a single network or production company for their economic survival. The legacy of the early 2000s child stars is therefore not one of defeat, but of profound transformation and empowerment, illustrating how a group of vulnerable young performers successfully navigated a flawed system, survived the intense pressures of premature fame, and used their lived experiences to forge a safer, fairer, and more equitable industry for those who follow in their footsteps. Looking back on the entire narrative arc, from the unstable working-class childhoods and the thrilling initial breakthrough of a $3,000 episode, through the intense, highly demanding years of a global television phenomenon where a $90,000 salary was aggressively eroded by taxes and management fees, to the sudden economic cliff that awaited them at the conclusion of production. The story of these child icons is a powerful testament to human resilience. It forces the audience to look past the vibrant, nostalgic facade of our favorite childhood memories and recognize the real human labor, sacrifice, and strength that went into creating the media that defined a generation. It stands as a vivid reminder that true success is not measured by the fleeting glamour of a Hollywood spotlight or the temporary illusion of wealth, but by the courage to speak the truth, the ability to reinvent oneself in the face of systemic adversity, and the dedication to ensuring that the lessons of the past are used to protect and uplift the creators of the future. As the credits roll on that golden era of television history, the lasting impact of these performers is found not just in the endless laughter track of their classic episodes, but in the permanent structural changes they have inspired across the entire entertainment ecosystem, ensuring that the magic of children's television is finally matched by a system of fair compensation, dignity, and respect for the young artists who bring those worlds to life.